Welcome to the Book Club interview with your host, Scott Hollister, a show that empowers you to discover your best self through a deep understanding and review of books dedicated to self-improvement and business.
Welcome to the Book Club interview. My name is Scott Hollister, your host. Today's guest is Craig Curelop, who wrote the book, The House Hacking Strategy. Craig, welcome to the show today. How you doing?
Hey, great, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you coming on. We had a great conversation over at Anson Young's meetup this year over in Denver. So got some great conversations talking about real estate and financing, all that good stuff. Before I get into it, do you want to tell listeners a little bit more about your history and where you come from?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess my story all started, I graduated from Northeastern University in 2015, go Huskies. And I moved out to California for a job that I actually absolutely hated. And basically, I was really fortunate to find this job because it basically allowed me at age 22, 23 to realize that I did not want to be working for the rest of my life. So I stumbled upon the financial independence, real estate, all of these things. And then I found Bigger Pockets. And now here I am today working at Bigger Pockets, writing a book for Bigger Pockets and investing in real estate so that I can achieve financial independence.
That's awesome, man. There you go. So you took the jump. So how scary was that jumping from the job out in California to pick up and move to Denver?
Man, I was so ready to get out of there. It actually was not very scary at all. And I actually knew no one in Denver when I first came over here either. But I just had confidence that it felt so right and I knew it was going to work. So yeah, not even a question about it.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. It takes some guts, though. But it sounds like you're with the right company. Absolutely love Bigger Pockets, everything you're about, and it comes to fruition now that you're a published author. That's got to be pretty exciting, right?
Yeah, it is exciting. I never thought I would be there, but yeah, it's really humbled to be here for sure.
Well, that's good. That's awesome. So let's talk about what are your you wrote the book on house hacking. I think it's one of the most important strategies you could start in real estate. I definitely echo everything you said about it. Phenomenal book. So what was that first house hack for you and how did it change your life?
Yeah, so the first house hack for me, I moved to Denver in April 2017 and I closed on my first property in June 2017. It did not take me very long. I really just wanted to jump in and get started. So that property was a duplex, an up-down duplex, that is 1.5 miles away from the office and just 5 blocks north of Denver's largest park in City Park. And so What that duplex is it's up down and it's 2 1-bed, 1-bath units. And so I had rented the top out full time and I lived in the bottom half, but I rented out my bedroom on Airbnb and made a quasi bedroom out of like a curtain and a room divider. I put that in my living room, and I basically slept on a futon in my living room for a year to make sure that property really, really worked for me and got the most out of it that I possibly could.
I love it, man. I love that. The quasi bedroom with the cardboard.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
It was interesting, and it was actually kind of funny because a lot of people think that there's no way you do that, and I'm not trying to convince anyone to do that, but after the first week or two, it actually wasn't so bad. And I actually got to meet people from all around the world, which was really interesting. And I just had kind of like a revolving door of roommates. And some of those people I'm actually still in touch with today. So it was good. I definitely wouldn't change myself for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that in the book. And a couple of interesting character sets. That's got to be such a opener, right? Getting people in your house. But I mean, that's how you create connections. I think that's the power of Bigger Pockets, right? It's connecting people across the globe, being able to connect, with that common theme. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I think you taking a risk that young, right? The house hacking it's not opportune, right? We're not buying our dream house right off the bat. It's a little bit of sacrifice up front that pays off a lot down the end. And I think you took it a step further, man. That's great. So I'm sure it financially helped you a lot more, right? Trying to wipe out that housing cost.
Oh, 100%. I mean, my housing costs were 100% covered. I was actually profiting to live there for free. And and it also gave me that real estate experience. It was just such an amazing experience overall. It was such a unique experience too. And with regards to the risk, my mindset there was, at the time I was 24 years old and I had nothing to lose, right? I had a negative net worth. I had nothing but maybe a $500 laptop to my name. So what did I have to lose? Nothing, right? And I was single as well, so that also helped. But yeah, I just trying to take advantage of my situation.
No, that's great. And one of my first questions was, why do you think the house hack is the best way to get started? And you just, nailed off at least five. In hindsight, now that you've closed, after that property and you're continuing to be a real estate investor, what do you think was one of the best takeaways of why house hacking is the best way to get started in real estate?
It just allows you to save up so much money. I would expect that most of your listeners here, their highest expense is likely going to be housing. And to eliminate that expense, you're talking for some people thousands of dollars a month, which translates to $12,000 to $20,000 a year of savings, which you can then reinvest into more real estate, which then provides you that same return, and you just start to really exponentially grow your net worth to a point that is above and beyond all of your peers. That's one reason, right? So if you want to achieve financial independence in 3 to 7 years, great way to go about doing it. The second way is if you want to get started in real estate investing and you want to start that career, I mean, you're learning firsthand, and the best part is you don't really, you're managing it while living there. So it becomes a lot easier than having to drive across town or having to call someone to go check your property out for you. So it's just, from those two regards, phenomenal way to start out.
No, that's great. And you bring back some Scott Trench wisdom there. I remember Set for Life right there. I love how he attacked that, try to wipe out your living costs, which is one of the most costly living expenses we have monthly, instead of that, $5 Starbucks coffee. I absolutely that. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of recommendations you have for a first-time house hacker, because, not only is just buying a house a very stressful and new time for most people, we're trying to buy an investment property on top of that, which, you got to figure out expenses, how to manage. So anything that you would do different now that you've been through that process?
So one thing I did is I bought that duplex first because I really wanted a duplex. But I realized that strategy is probably not the best strategy. I've since transitioned to this buy a single family home with 5% down, so I wouldn't have to waste my FHA. And I could rent out the rooms separately, and you can make way more from a cash flow perspective. Single family houses tend to appreciate a little bit faster as well, and they're much more liquid in terms that there's a lot more buyers out there for single family homes. So I think if I had to do it over again, I would probably actually start with a single family, but I actually did not even hear of that strategy at the time. And now that's kind of what I'm pursuing.
Interesting. And so that's your next purchase, right? You went from the duplex to the single?
Yeah. So exactly 1 year later, I closed because, with any of these owner-occupied loans, you need to live in the property for exactly 1 year. So exactly 1 year later, I closed on my second property, which was a single family home. It was a 5-bed, 2-bath, single family home just outside of Denver. It's like 5 miles north of Denver, 10 miles by bike, 5 miles by car. And again, I would have it close to the bike path because that is what I really value, riding into work. So I still ride my bike into work. And so this time I had my own bedroom. I lived upstairs in one of the bedrooms, one of the crappier bedrooms, and rented out the 4 other rooms. And I was covering my mortgage by well over $1,000 a month, living for free, building equity in the property. The property was appreciating and still cash flowing all at the same time. And this time I had a home to live in. I had my own room, had a window, it had doors. Amazing.
That's cool, man. I love it. Little creativeness.
Oh, for sure.
Now, in terms of looking at numbers when underwriting a house hack, I'm sure the single family duplex are a little bit different, but kind of the same things when it comes to, CapEx items like roof, furnaces. What are your main takeaways when you look to underwrite a deal?
So basically, it's really, really simple. People tend to confuse this a lot with a lot of different variables. But really, all you need to know is what your mortgage payment is going to be, and you can get that from your lender. And eventually, you just kind of know what mortgage payment you'll receive. And then you need to know what you'll get for rent, right? And so if your mortgage payment is going to be $2,000, I personally would want at least $2,700, $2,800 in rent coming in while living for free. So that's kind of like the type of deals that I look for, and those are what I see in Denver. And then you also want to set aside, between typically $200 to $500 for reserves. And those reserves include vacancy capex, um, maintenance, all of that stuff tied into one number. So you just have one number to worry about, and you just kind of factor in, okay, how big is the property? The bigger the property, the, the bigger the property, it's likely going to, the roof is going to probably cost a little bit more to replace. If you're going to need more capex, there's going to be more maintenance, and depending on location, you may have more or less vacancy. You just take all that into account and just adjust that number accordingly. And really, it shouldn't be off by 50 or $100. And even if it is, if your deals are that close, that's a problem. So that's why we shoot for $700 to $1,000 over the mortgage.
A little bit of buffer, a lot of safety net with the good reserves. That's awesome. That helps protect them downside. And I think that was one of my biggest mistakes is, the mortgage is this, rent's this. Oh, we're good. But then when something breaks, you don't want to be dipping too much in the savings. I echo those wise words. So when it comes, property management tips while house hacking. So being in a duplex, renting out another unit might be a little bit simpler. Do you have any, common courtesy tips when it is, a single family house hack under the same roof?
Yeah. So when it's a single family house hack, you're not just a landlord, you're also a roommate. So, and I would say 85% of the time you're a roommate. So just be a respectful roommate most of the time. Chat with them, but I wouldn't get too friendly just because then they think you can take it in. There's just, if you have too chill, there's easy ways to get taken advantage of. And sometimes you have to lay down the law. And I've had to do that a couple times. And basically, I would just say, usually we're friends and we're roommates, but right now my landlord hat is on, and we're not friends and we're not roommates. And this is how we're going to have this conversation. And I basically just preempt any serious conversation with, like, I've got my landlord hat on. And that basically sets the tone, like, I'm not messing around. This is what it's about. And we're here to get to the point, so then we can go back to being friends again. So you definitely have to play those boundaries. But again, if you're just communicative about it, it's literally almost impossible to misinterpret.
That's great. No, part business, part friendship. Nice. Any good takeaways as opposed to one downfall you'd see with the single family to a duplex, triplex, or quad?
Yeah. So the way the single family works is it's just the numbers work out way better in terms of cash flow. Mm-hmm. And again, I do really like the single family. The one downside is that when you do decide to move out, eventually you're probably not going to want to rent by the room forever because it is more work for sure. It's, having a 5-bedroom house is like having 5 different units in terms of different leases, different people collecting rent from, all that type of stuff. So at some point, you're going to probably want to just totally pull out of the single family and just either rent it out as a one whole single family unit or sell it. But if you decide to rent it out as a one whole single family unit, you're going to lose a lot of that additional cash flow. You just really need to make sure that it works both as a single unit as well as a rent by the room.
That's great tips. Now, chapter 2, love this part because this was quite the fun at the beginning of my relationship, my now wife, but how to get your spouse on board. Absolutely love the tips. It was great. You have one of my favorite quotes in the book in that chapter as well. So what are some good takeaways to get your significant other on board with the house hack?
Yes, this is definitely not an easy question. It certainly differs depending on who your spouse is. And basically, I don't have a spouse, but I know a lot of people that house hack with spouses, and I've always asked them how they got each other on board. And typically, it's you plant the seed. Give them Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have them read a few books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Set for Life, hopefully the house hacking strategy. And you basically just show them the numbers and show them how well it works and how it can basically allow them to not work forever, so then they can do the things that you guys like to do together, right? I'm sure if you and your spouse want to have kids someday, I'm sure you're going to want to spend 100% of your time with your kids. Well, if you have a job, you can't do that. If you house hack, you can do that. You can get there much, much quicker if you do this now than if even if you do the whole financial independence route where you're just saving aggressively, that still takes 10 to 15 years. This takes much shorter than that. So that's one way. Two is if the kids and stuff isn't really a future and you guys are a little bit, if you're more into the travel type scene, well, how about you take a 6-month to 8-month vacation and travel by yourself, and you would actually come back richer than when you left, right? Not many people can say they can do that, but again, you want to do that when you're young, because that's when you can stay in hospitals and do all these things for super cheap. You don't mind taking bus rides or whatever it is, but you can take these long travel trips. And yeah, so I would just tease him or her with the reward and then show them how to get there through house hacking.
Perfect. I love it. I think that's the tangible thing, with real estate in general. And then to get someone on board, it's once they see it in their hands and it's not just something that's out there, it definitely helps. So I love those tips as well. And in terms of speaking on the FIRE movement, so I don't know too much about it. I know it's pretty big out where you are in Denver. So is that just the saving model? You mentioned it quickly.
So there's so many types of FIRE, but I would say the most conventional and basic is, you just are super, super frugal. You save, and you basically invest all of your savings into an index fund. The index fund provides you a return. And once the amount in your index funds is 25, or once the amount in your index funds is 25 times higher than your annual expenses, you're officially financially independent, and that's it. So it's crazy simple, absolutely doable. It's just even if you're a doctor, you've got tons of buttons and stuff. So unless you're making an extreme amount of money, it's almost impossible to do this in like 3 to 5 years. Their timeline is more, 10 to 12 years, which is still great. If you're starting at 24, you're going to be retired by 34, 35, no problem. So that is kind of that's like the difference, right? With house hacking, you're going to get properties cash from you $500 to $1,000 a month. After 3 properties in 3 years, you're financially independent. So I pretty much went from a negative net worth on my first one, and when I closed on that in June 2017, to financially independent now in September 2019, with the 3 house hacks that I have, because I made them work, right?
No, that's exactly the same thought. I mean, I think that's why we all love real estate so much, is because anybody can do it, and it happens quicker than you think once you do it right. And I love that. Now, in terms of financial independence, so what does that mean for you personally, and what's your definition?
Yeah, so the definition is just basically, the little definition is to have enough passive income to satisfy my expenses so that I can not work for the rest of my life and be totally happy. Now, why I want to do that is because, one, I really want to travel and do those kind of things. So I'd love to take a couple years to travel. 2 is it puts you in a position where you can play to win rather than play not to lose. So what I mean by that is most people who go to W-2 jobs play not to lose because it's a very safe bet, right? They come home, they need that paycheck, and if they lose that paycheck, they're scrambling to find another job. Whereas when you're playing to win, I could go into a new startup company that I really believe in their mission, take a $0 salary, work for 100% equity, and when that company sells in 3 to 5 years, cash out with millions and millions of dollars, because that's how companies work. Whereas the average person will need to take their $70,000 to $80,000 salary, maybe a small portion, but that will amount to maybe $30,000 to $50,000 rather than the millions of dollars that you would if you could just take 0 salary.
I love that, shifting the power to you instead of the employer.
Exactly. And you just have so much more negotiating power too. If you don't need a job, you just want a job. There's just really almost no downside to it besides the work you have to put in up front. But honestly, it's pretty fun once you start doing it.
Oh, that's amazing. I think the best thing that you mentioned too was you started with your definition, but then you attached your why right after it.
Yeah, I think you need to have a why that's greater than I want to be rich or I want to have a lot of money, because that won't be sustainable. You need something that is just beyond the power of money to really keep you going and keeping you waking up in the morning to actually achieve this goal.
So from what I'm gathering from our conversation, it sounds like you're a huge traveler. So so you've mentioned a few times, financial freedom, travel the world. So what are some great places you've been, and what are some places that you want to hit?
Oh man, yeah. So hit up my favorite subject. some of the favorite places I've been to are, I went scuba diving in the Galapagos, which was just absolutely incredible. I've done Machu Picchu, went to Buenos Aires, which is an amazing place. Did some time in Southeast Asia, did some scuba diving there. Went rock climbing, and there were like monkeys all around us rock climbing. Did a Euro trip throughout Europe, saw all those like ancient cities, Rome, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many places that I'm gonna absolutely go back to too, because those were faster trips because I only had really a month to do everything in that part of the world. So again, I'd rather take like 6 to 8 months and take my time, get to know the locals a little bit better, kind of get integrated in the community. So I don't know if there's like, I want to go everywhere, right? So I couldn't just say like, I want to go here next. I would like to do some slow travel next, where I actually really kind of can get embedded in the culture, maybe learn Spanish, that kind of stuff.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's the financial freedom? Is it a amount of cash flow, or is it a number of properties that you've kind of found what works for you out in Denver?
Yeah, for me, it's really just how much income am I generating for my properties over what my expenses are, and what my expenses would be in the next step of my life, right? Which I expect at this point will be travel. So I know that my real estate can sustain my traveling pretty much forever. And I also got a nest egg too, just in case something happens or whatever, right? Like I wouldn't say like you want $0 in the bank and just all this passive income. You still want to have a little bit of savings before you go, because things do happen. Unexpected expenses do occur. So.
No, that's smart. And I love how you said that, because I started at first. I'm like, okay, all I need is this, this, and this. Got married, started talking about kids, and then insurance. And I'm like, okay, that just quadrupled.
Yeah, insurance is ridiculous.
Oh, yep. Oh, I know. But no, that's good, because it's so tangible. It's so real. And I love how you said, mention to your spouse or someone that, you're with to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's exactly what happened. It's like, that book really it switches something in your head, even though it's not really great about details, how to get there, but it kind of just challenges you to think differently.
Yeah, super high level, but it's so well written and easy to read, and it's like a fun read because it is a bit of a story at the same time. And yeah, it's an incredible book. If you haven't read it, I think it's the number one best personal finance selling book of all time, and reasonably so. So yeah, definitely pick that up. Yeah,
so watch out. House hacking's coming behind that, though. So we'll get that one up.
Yeah, if only.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up, so I just want to, quick reach out. So how about writing the book? You want to tell listeners a little bit more, about your writing style, how the outline is, and just a quick, 10,000 foot overview?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, my writing style is pretty much kind of like a top. It's very easy to read. I'll throw a couple jokes in there. Very light read. It won't. Again, I think you'll be able to breeze through it pretty quickly. The way the book is laid out is that the first couple chapters are going to explain what financial independence is, how you can get there in just a few short years, and why house hacking is such a powerful tool to get there, and why it is frankly the best investment tool, including how you can just get returns of well into 100% plus on every single deal that you do. And by return, I mean that encapsulates the cash flow, it encapsulates the loan pay down, it encapsulates the appreciation of property, all of those things based on your down payment that you put down. Usually you'll get your entire down payment back within the year, which is the definition of 100% return. So I'll talk about all that. And then I'll go into the details, but okay, how do you screen for tenants? How do you find the neighborhood to invest in? How do you find the right property to invest in? What house hacking strategy works for you? How do you screen tenants? How do you set up your short-term rentals? If that's just kind of, you want to do the Airbnb type route. How do you manage all these tenants? All of these things are all in the book in very good detail. And there's also at the end of each chapter, I have a case study of basically 10 or maybe it's 14 random, at the end of each chapter. So however many chapters there are, I think there's 14 chapters. There'll be 14 case studies of normal people who have house hacked and have done so successfully. And I'll tell you that I did not interview a single person that had not done it successfully. So 14 for 14. If you include me, it's 15 for 15. And Scott, it sounds like you had done it. And if it was a success for you, it just seems to work almost every time if you know what you're doing. So if you're doing this research, then you likely know what you're doing.
Correct. Yeah, this is a phenomenal book. I wish this was written before I bought mine, because I think it would have just sped up my education curve a little bit more. And those, end of the chapter case studies were a nice touch. I love how you put those in there.
Yeah. And again, with almost every other person as well, you'll see that it's not about the money. It's all about the why. And the why has nothing to do with money in most of these cases. So again.
Well said. I love it. All right, Craig, before we wrap things up, you want to tell listeners a little bit more where to find you and a best place to purchase the book.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at the Fi Guy, PHEFIGUI. You can also find me on Facebook or Bigger Pockets. And you can find the book if you go to www.biggerpockets.com/househack. And that is pretty much it. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on, Craig.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this show of the Book Club Interview with your host, Scott Hollister. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on the Book Club Interview.